It was supposed to be just another Tuesday morning at Kensington Palace. The sun was barely rising over the London skyline. Birds chirped in the royal gardens. Everything seemed peaceful, but in less than 10 minutes, a single decision would change a young guard's life forever. Officer Daniel Brooks stood at his post near the East Gate. He had been with the Royal Protection Unit for only 8 months. Most days were quiet. Tourists took photos from behind the barriers. Delivery trucks came and went. Nothing ever really happened. But Daniel had a habit his colleagues sometimes mocked him for. He watched people, not just their faces, but their hands, their eyes, the way they moved. And if you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. You won't want to miss what happens next. That morning, a man in a gray maintenance uniform approached the service entrance. He carried a toolbox. He wore a cap pulled low over his face. He had the right badge clipped to his belt. Everything looked normal. Almost Daniel noticed something. The man's shoes. They were expensive. Too expensive for a maintenance worker. Polished leather, not work boots. And his hands were clean. No grease, no worn skin. Daniel felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The man swiped his badge at the gate. It beeped. Green light. Access granted. He was walking through. Daniel's mind raced. Maybe he was overthinking it. Maybe the guy just liked nice shoes. But something felt wrong. That old instinct his father, a retired police officer, had drilled into him since childhood. Trust your gut, son. It's trying to tell you something. Daniel stepped forward. Excuse me, sir. Can I see your work order? The man stopped. Turned slowly. His face was calm. Almost too calm. It's in the system. I'm here to check the heating units. I understand, Daniel said, keeping his voice polite but firm. But I still need to see the work order. Standard procedure. For just a second, the man's jaw tightened. His eyes flickered toward the palace entrance, then back to Daniel. I don't have it on me. It's digital. Your supervisor already approved it? Daniel didn't move. Then I'll call my supervisor right now to confirm. Won't take a minute. The air between them grew heavy. Other guards nearby began to notice. One of them, Officer Harris, moved closer. The man in the gray uniform shifted his weight. His hand moved slightly toward the toolbox. Then, from the courtyard behind them, a sound. Light footsteps. A child's laughter. Daniel glanced over his shoulder for just a split second. Prince George, the young heir to the throne, was walking with his nanny toward the garden. He was wearing his school uniform. He looked happy, innocent, unaware. When Daniel turned back, the man's expression had changed. There was something cold in his eyes now. Something dangerous. And Daniel realized with terrible clarity that this was no maintenance worker. This was someone who didn't belong here. Someone who had planned this. Someone who had gotten too close. Daniel's hand moved to his radio. But before he could speak, the man took a step forward. Not toward Daniel. Toward the courtyard. Toward the prince. Daniel moved on instinct. He stepped directly into the man's path, blocking him. Sir, I need you to stay right here. The man's face hardened. Get out of my way. Can't do that, Daniel said. His heart was pounding now, but his voice stayed steady. Years of training kicked in. Stay calm. Stay alert. Protect the principal at all costs. Officer Harris was beside him now, hand on his radio. Daniel, what's going on? Call it in, Daniel said quietly, never taking his eyes off the stranger. Possible unauthorized access. We need backup. The man's hand moved faster this time, reaching into the toolbox. Daniel saw the glint of metal. Not a wrench. Not a screwdriver. Something else. Something that didn't belong in the hands of a heating technician, Daniel didn't think. He reacted. He grabbed the man's wrist and twisted hard. The toolbox clattered to the ground, spilling its contents across the stone walkway. There, among a few actual tools meant to look convincing, was a folding knife. And something worse. A small canister. Unmarked, the man yanked his arm free and swung. His fist connected with Daniel's jaw, snapping his head to the side. Pain exploded across his face, but Daniel didn't let go. He grabbed the man's jacket and pulled him away from the courtyard entrance. Away from the prince. Harris was shouting into his radio now. Security breach at Eastgate. Officer needs assistance. Lock down the family wing immediately. Within seconds, alarms blared across the palace grounds. The nanny in the courtyard heard them and immediately turned, pulling Prince George back toward the main building. The boy looked confused, but he trusted her. She moved quickly, shielding him with her body as they disappeared through a side door. The stranger fought harder now. He was stronger than Daniel expected. Trained. Not some random intruder. This was someone who knew what he was doing. Someone who had studied the palace layout. Someone with a plan. They crashed against the stone wall. Daniel felt the man's elbow slam into his ribs. The air rushed out of his lungs. For a moment, his grip loosened. The man shoved him back and broke free. He ran, not toward the street. Not toward the exit. He ran toward the garden. Toward where the prince had been just moments ago. Daniel forced himself to his feet and sprinted after him. His ribs screamed in pain. His vision blurred. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Not when a child's life was in danger. More guards were pouring out of the palace now. 6 of them. 8. They formed a wall between the intruder and the main building. The man skidded to a halt, trapped. He looked left, then right. Nowhere to go. But he wasn't done. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. A phone. He held it up, his thumb hovering over the screen. "Stay back!" he shouted, his voice sharp and panicked now. "I swear I'll do it." "Stay back." Everyone froze. Daniel's blood turned cold. A phone. A trigger. The canister in the toolbox. This wasn't just an attempted attack. This was something bigger. Something coordinated. The head of security, Commander Phillips, stepped forward slowly. His hands were raised, his voice calm. "Let's talk about this. You don't want to do something you can't take back." The man's hand shook. Sweat dripped down his face. He looked young now that his cap had fallen off. Maybe 30. Maybe younger. His eyes darted around wildly, searching for an escape that didn't exist. "You don't understand," the man said, his voice cracking. "They said it would be empty. They said no one would be here. I didn't want this." "I didn't." He stopped. His eyes locked onto something over Commander Phillips' shoulder. Daniel followed his gaze and felt his stomach drop. A window on the second floor. Movement behind the glass. A small figure. A child's face watching. Prince George hadn't made it to the safe room yet. He was still inside, looking down at the chaos below. The stranger saw him too, and for just a moment, something flickered across his face. Regret, fear, desperation, then his thumb moved toward the screen. Daniel didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, closing the distance between them in 3 long strides. His hand shot out and knocked the phone from the man's grip. It skittered across the pavement, spinning away from them both. The stranger let out a roar of frustration and tackled Daniel to the ground. They hit the stone hard. Daniel's head bounced against the walkway, stars bursting behind his eyes. But he held on. He wrapped his arms around the man's torso and refused to let go. Even as fists rained down on his back and shoulders, other guards rushed in. Pulling the man off Daniel and forcing him to the ground, they had him pinned in seconds. Handcuffs clicked. The threat was contained. But Daniel couldn't hear any of it. His ears were ringing. His vision swam. He rolled onto his side, gasping for air. Commander Phillips was kneeling beside him. Brooks, can you hear me?" Daniel nodded weakly. "The prince. Is he safe?" "He's safe. They got him to the secure room." "You did good, son." But Daniel barely heard the praise. His body was shutting down, adrenaline draining away, and leaving nothing but pain in its wake. Paramedics arrived. They loaded him onto a stretcher. As they carried him toward the ambulance, he caught a glimpse of the stranger being led away in handcuffs. The man's head was down. He wasn't fighting anymore. The phone lay on the ground a few feet away. A bomb disposal expert approached it carefully, tools in hand. Everyone held their breath. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, the expert picked it up, examined it, and gave a thumbs up. It was just a phone. No detonator. No remote trigger. The canister in the toolbox turned out to be pepper spray, not a chemical weapon. But the danger had been real enough. The intention clear. And if Daniel hadn't stopped him at the gate, if he hadn't trusted that nagging feeling in his gut, the stranger would have gotten inside, would have gotten close to the prince. And then what? At the hospital, doctors checked Daniel over. Bruised ribs, a mild concussion, cuts and scrapes. Nothing serious. Nothing permanent. But as he lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't stop replaying it all in his mind. The shoes, the clean hands, the look in the man's eyes when he saw Prince George at the window. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Commander Phillips stepped inside, followed by a woman in a dark suit. She introduced herself as Agent Sarah Winters from MI5. She sat down beside his bed, her expression serious but kind. "Officer Brooks, you prevented something terrible today," she said. "We need to ask you some questions about what you saw." Daniel told them everything. Every detail. The man's behavior. His words. The way he seemed surprised when he said they told me it would be empty. It all pointed to something bigger than one man with a grudge. "Do you know who he is?" Daniel asked. Agent Winters exchanged a glance with Commander Phillips. "His name is Marcus Reed. He's been on our radar for a few months. Low-level activist turned extremist. We knew he was angry, but we didn't think he was dangerous." "Clearly, we were wrong," said they, Daniel pointed out. "Like he was working with someone." "We know," Agent Winters said quietly, "and that's what worries us. We don't think he acted alone. We think someone fed him information. Someone who knew the palace schedule. Someone inside." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. An insider. A traitor. Someone who walked the same halls Daniel did, who wore the same uniform, who had taken the same oath. And that person was still out there. "We'll find them," Commander Phillips said firmly. "But in the meantime, the royal family has asked to meet you." Daniel blinked. "What?" "Tomorrow morning. Prince William and Princess Catherine want to thank you personally. You saved their son's life." The weight of it hit Daniel all at once. He hadn't just stopped a stranger at a gate. He had stood between a child and danger, a child who would one day be king, and now he was going to meet that child's parents. The future king and queen. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had done his job. But as he lay there in the hospital bed, bruised and exhausted, a small smile crossed his face. His father would be proud. That was enough. The next morning, Daniel returned to the palace. His ribs were wrapped tight. His head still ached. But he wore his dress uniform and stood as straight as he could manage. He was led through corridors he had never seen before, deep into the private residence. The walls were lined with paintings of kings and queens from centuries past. History surrounded him. They stopped at a sitting room door. Commander Phillips knocked gently, then opened the door. "Your Royal Highnesses, Officer Brooks is here." Daniel stepped inside. The room was elegant but warm. Morning sunlight poured through tall windows. And there, standing near the fireplace, were Prince William and Princess Catherine. They looked exactly like their photographs, yet somehow more real, more human. Prince William stepped forward first, extending his hand. "Officer Brooks, thank you for coming." Daniel shook his hand, trying not to wince from the pain in his ribs. "Your Royal Highness." "It's an honor." "The honor is ours," Catherine said softly. She approached with kind eyes that seemed to see right through his formal composure. "What you did yesterday was extraordinary." "I was just doing my job, ma'am." "No," William said firmly. "You did more than your job. You trusted your instincts when most people would have let protocol override common sense. You put yourself in harm's way to protect our son. That's not just duty. That's courage." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He hadn't cried since the incident, but something about their genuine gratitude broke through his defenses. "I'm just glad he's safe." "He wants to meet you," Catherine said. glancing toward a door on the far side of the room. "If you're comfortable with that," Daniel's eyes widened. "Prince George, of course. I mean, yes, Your Royal Highness." Catherine smiled and walked to the door. She opened it slightly and spoke softly. "George, love, you can come in now." The boy who stepped into the room was small for his age, with his father's eyes and his mother's shy smile. He wore a simple sweater and jeans. He looked nervous. His mother took his hand and led him closer. "George, this is Officer Brooks," William said gently. "He's the man who kept you safe yesterday." Prince George looked up at Daniel. His young face was serious, thoughtful beyond his years. "My mom said you got hurt because of me." Daniel knelt down slowly, ignoring the protest from his ribs. He met the boy's eyes at his level. "I didn't get hurt because of you. I got hurt because there was a bad man who wanted to do something wrong. And it's my job to stop bad men. You didn't do anything wrong. But if I hadn't been in the courtyard, then I still would have stopped him," Daniel said firmly. "Because that's what guards do. We protect people. Not just princes. Everyone. And you know what? I'd do it again in a heartbeat." George studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you, Officer Brooks." The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A toy soldier, painted in red uniform. He held it out to Daniel. "This is my favorite one. I want you to have it." Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. He took the toy carefully, as if it were made of glass. "I'll keep it with me always. I promise." George smiled then, a real smile. Catherine placed a gentle hand on her son's shoulder, and William's expression softened with pride and relief. This was why Daniel did what he did. Not for medals or recognition. For moments like this, for keeping families safe. After a few more minutes of conversation, Commander Phillips led Daniel out. But as they walked through the corridors, the commander stopped and turned to face him. "Brooks, there's something else. The investigation into Marcus Reed has revealed some troubling information. MI5 believes he had help from someone within our security team." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Who? They don't know yet. But they're going through everything. Phone records, shift schedules, access logs. Whoever it is, they were careful, but not careful enough. They'll find them." "Do you think I'm in danger?" Daniel asked. Phillips paused. "I think you disrupted something bigger than we understand. And I think the people behind it aren't happy about that. We're assigning you a protection detail until this is resolved." Daniel nodded slowly. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That evening, Daniel returned to his small flat in North London. 2 plainclothes officers waited outside in an unmarked car. He waved to them and headed inside. The place felt emptier than usual, quieter. He set the toy soldier on his nightstand and sat down on his bed. Exhausted, his phone buzzed. A text from his father. "Saw the news. Proud of you, son. Call me when you can." Daniel smiled. He would call tomorrow. Tonight, he just needed to rest. But as he lay down, his mind wouldn't stop racing. Who was the insider? Someone he knew? Someone he trusted? The thought made him sick. Days passed. The investigation continued. Daniel returned to duty, though he was reassigned to internal posts while security reviewed protocols. He gave statement after statement. MI5 agents questioned him repeatedly, looking for any detail he might have missed. Then, 1 week after the incident, Commander Phillips called him into his office. Agent Winters was there too. Their faces were grim. "Found him," Phillips said. "The insider. It's someone you know." Daniel's heart sank. "Who?" Agent Winters pulled out a tablet and turned it toward him. On the screen was a photograph. Officer James Thornton. Daniel knew him. Not well, but they had worked together. Shared shifts. Had coffee in the break room? James was quiet, competent, unremarkable in every way. That was probably the point. "Thornton," Daniel said, disbelief heavy in his voice. "Are you sure?" "We're sure," Winters said. "We traced encrypted messages between him and Red going back 3 months. He provided Reed with the maintenance badge, the access codes, the schedule. He told Reed that Tuesday morning would be the best time, because security rotations were changing. He didn't count on you being observant. Daniel felt anger rising in his chest. Why would he do this? Phillips leaned back in his chair, his expression hard. Money, debt. Reed's group paid him £50,000. Thornton was drowning financially. Gambling problems. He saw an opportunity and took it. Where is he now? In custody, Winters said. He broke down during interrogation, confessed everything. He claims he didn't know Reed was targeting the prince specifically. Said he thought it was just a protest stunt, something symbolic. He's lying, of course. But even if he believed that, it doesn't matter. He betrayed his oath. Daniel thought about the toy soldier sitting on his nightstand, about Prince George's worried face, about how close they had come to tragedy. All because one man valued money over duty. Over a child's life, will there be a trial? Daniel asked. Eventually Winters said, but it won't be public. National security concerns? He'll be sentenced under the Official Secrets Act. He's looking at 20 years minimum. Good, Daniel thought. But he didn't say it out loud. Instead, he asked the question that had been gnawing at him. Is it over? Are there others? Winters and Phillips exchanged a glance. Reed's group has scattered, Winters said carefully. We've made arrests, frozen accounts. But these kinds of networks don't just disappear. They adapt. They'll be quieter now, more careful. But yes, Officer Brooks, the immediate threat is over. Daniel nodded, though he wasn't entirely convinced. People like Reed didn't give up. They just waited. There's one more thing, Phillips said, sliding a folder across the desk. The royal family has requested that you be reassigned to the close protection detail. Personal security for the Cambridge family. It's a significant promotion. The job is yours, if you want it. Daniel opened the folder. Inside were details of the position, the training required, the responsibilities. It was everything a young officer could dream of. A career-defining opportunity. But it also meant something else. It meant being close to danger. It meant making himself a target for anyone who wanted to harm the royals. He thought about his father. About the years he spent as a police officer, walking into dangerous situations because someone had to. About the lessons he taught Daniel. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you're afraid. I want it, Daniel said. I'm in. Philip smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Good man. You start training next month. Welcome to the team. Over the following weeks, Daniel threw himself into the new role. Advanced defensive tactics, threat assessment, emergency response. He learned how to anticipate danger before it arrived. How to think like someone who wanted to harm the people he protected. It was exhausting, but it was also exactly where he needed to be. One afternoon, during a routine shift at Kensington Palace, Daniel was walking the perimeter when he saw a familiar figure in the garden. Prince George, playing with a football. His nanny sat nearby on a bench, watching. The boy kicked the ball and it rolled toward Daniel's feet. George ran over, then stopped when he recognized him. Officer Brooks. Daniel smiled and kicked the ball back gently. Good form, Your Highness. Just George, the boy said, grinning. My mom says you're going to be around more now. That's right. You're stuck with me. Good, George said seriously. I like having you here. I feel safer. Those simple words hit Daniel harder than any punch Marcus Reed had thrown. This was why he did it. Not for glory or recognition. For this. For a child who could play in a garden without fear. For a family who could live their lives knowing someone was watching over them. I'll always keep you safe, George, Daniel said quietly. That's a promise. George nodded, then ran back to his game. Daniel watched him for a moment, then continued his patrol. The sun was setting over London, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere out there, threats still existed. People who wanted to cause harm. But here, inside these walls, there was safety. There was peace. And Daniel would guard that peace with everything he had. His radio crackled. Brooks, report to the main gate. We have a delivery that needs verification. Daniel smiled to himself. Some things never changed. He was still the guard who checked everything twice, who trusted his instincts, who noticed the details others missed, and he wouldn't have it any other way. 6 months later, life had settled into a new rhythm. Daniel's promotion made headlines for a few days, then faded from public attention. That was fine with him. He wasn't in this for fame. The work itself was reward enough. He became a familiar presence around the Cambridge family. Prince George would wave when he saw him. Princess Charlotte, the younger daughter, once brought him a drawing she made of a guard. Prince Louis, still very small, barely noticed him at all. But they were safe. That was what mattered one evening. Daniel was finishing his shift when Commander Phillips approached him in the security office. "Brooks, a word?" They stepped into a private room. Phillips closed the door and sat down heavily. He looked tired. Older than Daniel remembered. "Marcus Reed is being sentenced tomorrow," Phillips said. "Thought you should know." Daniel nodded. "What's he looking at? 15 years? Could have been more, but he cooperated with the investigation, gave up names, bank accounts, safe houses. My5 dismantled half his network because of his testimony. Do you think he meant it?" Daniel asked. When he said he didn't want to hurt anyone, Phillips was quiet for a moment. I think he convinced himself he was fighting for something noble. Justice, change, revolution. But when it came down to it, he was willing to hurt a child to make his point. Intentions don't matter much after that. Daniel thought about the man's face when he saw George at the window. The flicker of regret, the hesitation. Maybe there had been a decent person inside Marcus Reed once. Somewhere along the way, anger and ideology had twisted him into something else. Something dangerous? "Has there been any other activity?" Daniel asked. "From his group?" "Quiet," Phillips said. "Too quiet if you ask me. But MI5 is watching. Tied. And we've tightened security protocols across all royal residences. What happened that day won't happen again." Daniel hoped he was right. But he also knew that security was never perfect. There would always be gaps. There'd always be someone looking for a way through. That's why people like him existed. Stand in those gaps and refuse to move. The next day, Daniel took a rare day off. He drove to his childhood home in Sussex, where his father still lived. The old man was in the garden, pruning roses when Daniel arrived. He looked up and smiled. "There's my hero," his father said, pulling off his gardening gloves. "I'm not a hero, Dad. You are to that boy, and to his family, and to me." His father clasped his shoulder firmly. "I taught you to trust your instincts. I'm proud you listened." They sat on the back porch, drinking tea as the afternoon sun warmed the garden. Daniel told him everything. The fear, the doubt, the nightmares he still had sometimes about what could have gone wrong. His father listened without interrupting, the way he always had. "You know what courage really is?" his father asked when Daniel finished. "It's being scared and doing it anyway. You were terrified that morning, I know you were. But you didn't freeze. You didn't second-guess yourself. You acted. That's what separates good men from great ones." Daniel smiled. "I just did what you would have done." "Maybe," his father said. "But you did it on your own. That's the point. You've become the man I always hoped you'd be." Those words meant more than any medal or commendation ever could. Daniel stayed for dinner, helping his father cook the way they used to when he was younger. They talked about small things: family, football, the weather, normal life. It was exactly what Daniel needed when he returned to London that night. He felt lighter, settled. The weight he'd been carrying since that Tuesday morning had eased. Not gone, but manageable. He understood now that some things would stay with him forever. The image of Marcus Reed's hand on that phone, sound of Prince George's voice asking if he got hurt because of him, the toy soldier on his nightstand. But he also understood that he had done something that mattered. He had stood between evil and innocence. He had won. Weeks turned into months. Life at the palace became routine again. Daniel trained new recruits, sharing lessons from his experience. He walked the grounds every day, always watching, always aware. And slowly he realized something important. He wasn't haunted by what happened. He was shaped by it. One autumn afternoon, Daniel was stationed near the garden when Prince William approached him. "Brooks, walk with me a moment." They strolled through the falling leaves, the prince's hands in his pockets, his manner relaxed, but purposeful. "I wanted you to know," William said, "that Catherine and I have discussed your actions that day many times. Not just what you did, but who you are. The kind of man who notices small details, who acts without hesitation, who cares deeply about protecting others. Thank you, sir. George still talks about you, you know. Says when he grows up he wants to be like Officer Brooks. Brave and kind." William stopped walking and turned to face him. "You gave him something precious that day, not just his safety. You gave him an example, a reminder that good people exist, that courage is real. In a world that can be dark and frightening, that's no small gift." Daniel felt emotion rising in his chest. "He's a special boy. They all are." "They are," William agreed. "And they're safer because of you. Never doubt that." As they walked back toward the palace, Daniel looked up at the windows. Somewhere inside, 3 children were living their lives. Playing, laughing, growing. They would face challenges, dangers, threats, both known and unknown. But for now, they were safe. And as long as Daniel Brooks was on duty, he would make sure it stayed that way. The toy soldier still sat on his nightstand at home. A reminder. Not of what could have gone wrong, but of what went right. Of a moment when a young guard trusted his instincts and changed the course of history in a small but significant way. Some people spend their whole lives searching for purpose. Daniel found his that Tuesday morning at the East Gate. He would guard it fiercely for the rest of his days.